Why does weakness repel the very people we most want to attract, while strength draws them like a magnet to our presence? In the shadowed corridors of Renaissance Italy, Niccolò Machiavelli penned truths so raw they still make us uncomfortable centuries later. His masterwork, The Prince, wasn't just about political power, it was about the fundamental nature of human attraction to strength and our instinctive rejection of weakness. Today, we explore 7 timeless Machiavellian lessons adapted to modern masculine psychology, revealing an uncomfortable truth that echoes through every relationship, every workplace, every social interaction. Weakness doesn't inspire compassion, it breeds contempt. Through these lessons, we'll uncover not just why women lose interest in emotionally weak men, but how any man can transform from someone who apologizes for existing into someone whose presence commands natural respect. This isn't about manipulation or cruelty, it's about understanding the primal psychology that governs attraction, respect, and social dynamics in ways that most men never fully grasp. Rule number 1. The lesson of decisive action: it is better to act and repent than to hesitate and regret. The weak man stands at the crossroads of every decision, paralyzed by the possibility of making the wrong choice. He seeks approval from everyone around him, asking his friends, his family, even strangers on the internet what he should order for dinner. This constant hesitation creates a pattern that women recognize immediately, not as thoughtfulness, but as the inability to lead even his own life. Machiavelli understood that in the game of power, hesitation is death, and in the game of attraction, indecision is equally fatal. Consider the man who spends 3 days crafting the perfect text message to a woman he likes, reading it to his friends, editing it 17 times, and finally sending something so sanitized and overthought that it carries no personality whatsoever. Compare this to the man who feels an impulse to invite her somewhere interesting and simply does it, accepting whatever outcome emerges from his authentic choice. The difference isn't just in the action, it's in the energy behind it. The confidence that says, I trust my judgment enough to act on it. Women aren't attracted to perfection. They're attracted to decisiveness because decisiveness signals capability. When you can't decide what restaurant to choose for a date, you're unconsciously communicating that you can't be trusted with bigger decisions like career moves, financial choices, or the countless daily decisions that shape a relationship. The woman watching you struggle with minor choices is unconsciously calculating whether you could handle major ones. And hesitation fails that test every time. The psychology here runs deeper than mere preference. Human beings are wired to follow those who can navigate uncertainty with confidence because uncertainty was historically dangerous. A leader who hesitated when the tribe needed to move, hunt, or defend itself was a leader who got people killed. This ancient programming doesn't disappear just because we live in safe, suburban environments now. It manifests in attraction patterns, workplace dynamics, and social hierarchies. To stop being the hesitant man, you must practice making decisions quickly and living with the consequences. Start small. Choose the restaurant without polling everyone's opinion. Pick the movie without endless research. Respond to messages within a reasonable time frame without overthinking every word. The goal isn't to make perfect decisions. It's to develop the mental muscle of decisiveness so that when bigger moments arrive, you're already trained to act with confidence rather than shrink into hesitation. Rule number 2. The art of strategic vulnerability. Never show all your cards, but never appear invulnerable. The weak man confuses vulnerability with emotional incontinence, spilling his deepest fears and insecurities to anyone who will listen, mistaking this oversharing for authenticity. He believes that if he just explains his anxiety enough, his depression enough, his childhood trauma enough, people will understand and love him for his honesty. Instead, he discovers that people, especially women, begin to see him not as vulnerable, but as unstable, unreliable, and emotionally exhausting to be around. Machiavelli knew that true power comes from controlling information about yourself, revealing strategically rather than compulsively. The strong man understands that vulnerability is like an expensive wine, powerful when shared in the right moment with the right person, but worthless when poured out freely to everyone. He shares his struggles, but only after establishing that he's actively working to overcome them. Only with people who have earned that level of intimacy through their own trustworthiness and emotional intelligence. There's a crucial difference between being open about your challenges and using your challenges as an excuse for your behavior. The weak man says, "I'm sorry I'm like this. I have anxiety and depression." The strong man says, "I struggle with anxiety sometimes, and here's what I do to manage it effectively." One positions you as a victim of your circumstances. The other positions you as someone who faces difficulties with agency and self-awareness. Women are attracted to men who can acknowledge their imperfections without being defined by them. They want to see that you're human, that you face real challenges, but they also want to see that you're actively engaged in becoming better rather than passively accepting your limitations. The man who shares his story of overcoming addiction demonstrates both vulnerability and strength. The man who constantly complains about his problems without taking action demonstrates only weakness. To master strategic vulnerability, learn to share your struggles as part of your growth story rather than as explanations for your current limitations. Wait for genuine intimacy to develop before revealing your deepest fears. And always couple honesty about your problems with evidence of your commitment to solving them. This isn't about hiding who you are, it's about presenting the full picture of who you're becoming. Rule number 3. The power of controlled emotions. Appear weak when you are strong. Strong when you are weak. The emotionally weak man is a slave to every feeling that passes through his consciousness, reacting to minor inconveniences as if they were life-threatening emergencies. He snaps at waiters when his order is wrong, has emotional breakdowns when plans change, and cycles through dramatic mood swings that leave everyone around him walking on eggshells. He mistakes this emotional reactivity for authenticity, not realizing that others see it as childishness disguised as sensitivity. Machiavelli understood that emotional control isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about choosing when and how to express them for maximum effect. The man with genuine emotional strength feels his emotions fully but responds to situations based on what will be most effective, not what feels most immediately satisfying. He might feel anger when someone disrespects him, but he'll respond with a measured approach that actually addresses the disrespect rather than just venting his feelings. This principle becomes crucial in romantic relationships, where emotional volatility creates anxiety rather than attraction. A woman needs to know that the man in her life can handle stress, conflict, and unexpected challenges without falling apart or becoming verbally aggressive. When she sees you lose your temper over traffic, get devastated by work criticism, or become passive-aggressive when you don't get your way, she's unconsciously cataloging these as signs that you might not be able to handle the real pressures that relationships inevitably bring. The difference between emotional strength and emotional suppression is the difference between a dam and a plugged drain. The dam channels water powerfully in a chosen direction. The plugged drain just builds pressure until it explodes. Emotional strength means processing your feelings internally, understanding their source and message, then choosing your response based on your values and goals rather than your immediate emotional impulse. To develop emotional control, start by creating space between feeling and reaction. When something triggers you, practice the pause, take 3 deep breaths. Identify what you're actually feeling and why, then choose your response consciously. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally intelligent enough to express feelings in ways that improve situations rather than escalate them. Rule number 4. The necessity of boundaries. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. The weak man lives in constant fear of disappointing others, so he says yes to everything and stands for nothing. He lets people interrupt him, disrespect his time, take advantage of his generosity, and walk over his clearly stated preferences because he believes that accommodation equals kindness. This chronic boundarylessness doesn't make him appear kind, it makes him appear desperate, available, and ultimately forgettable because people only value what they have to work to obtain or maintain. Machiavelli knew that respect comes not from being liked by everyone, but from being clear about what you will and won't accept. The man with strong boundaries doesn't seek to punish or control others. He simply maintains clear standards for how he expects to be treated and follows through consistently when those standards aren't met. He says no to plans that don't interest him, speaks up when someone interrupts him repeatedly, and doesn't chase people who consistently demonstrate low interest in his friendship or romantic attention. Women are particularly sensitive to boundaryless behavior because it signals several concerning traits: lack of self-respect, inability to protect what matters to you, and tendency to prioritize others' comfort over your own well-being. If you can't maintain boundaries with casual acquaintances, how can you be trusted to maintain boundaries in a relationship when real challenges arise? If you let your friends disrespect your time, will you let family members interfere in your marriage? The pattern of boundary weakness scales up, and intelligent women recognize this. The psychology of boundaries goes deeper than just personal preference. It's about demonstrating that you understand your own value. When you consistently accept treatment that doesn't align with your stated values, you're communicating that those values aren't actually important to you. When you let people consistently cancel plans, show up late, or treat you disrespectfully without consequence, you're training them to see you as someone whose preferences don't really matter. To strengthen your boundaries, start by identifying what you actually want and need in your relationships. Then practice communicating these needs clearly and following through with appropriate consequences when they're not respected. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or punitive. It means becoming clear about your standards and consistent in maintaining them, which paradoxically makes you more attractive to the people worth having in your life. Rule number 5. The principle of earned investment. Everyone sees what you appear. Few experience what you are. The weak man gives everything away immediately: his time, attention, resources, and emotional investment, hoping that his generosity will be reciprocated with equal enthusiasm. He pays for every date, always initiates contact, constantly offers help and support, and makes himself completely available whenever others need him. Instead of creating appreciation, this pattern creates a dynamic where others begin to expect his investment without feeling obligated to match it, leading to one-sided relationships that leave him feeling used and resentful. Machiavelli understood that people value what they work for more than what they receive freely. The man who requires others to invest effort, time, and energy into knowing him creates natural appreciation for his attention and company. He doesn't make himself scarce artificially, but he also doesn't make himself so available that his presence loses all special meaning. He matches energy rather than constantly exceeding it, allowing relationships to develop at a pace that requires mutual investment from both parties. This principle becomes especially important in romantic contexts, where the man who immediately becomes a woman's emotional support system, financial provider, and constant entertainment source often finds that she begins to see him as a utility rather than a romantic interest. The investment he hoped would demonstrate his value instead demonstrates his desperation, and desperation is fundamentally unattractive because it suggests low self-worth and limited options. The key insight here is that attraction requires tension, and tension requires some level of uncertainty about outcome. When you invest everything immediately, you remove all uncertainty and therefore all tension. The woman knows she has your complete interest and investment, so she doesn't need to work to maintain it, and paradoxically, This security makes the relationship less exciting and emotionally engaging for her. To apply this principle, practice matching investment levels rather than always exceeding them. If someone texts you occasionally, respond occasionally. If they make time for you once a week, don't push for daily contact. If they put effort into planning something nice, reciprocate with equal effort rather than trying to dramatically exceed it. This isn't about playing games. It's about creating relationships with natural give and take rather than one-sided dynamics that breed resentment. Rule number 6. The leadership mindset. It is much more secure to be feared than to be loved. The weak man seeks to be liked above all else, constantly adjusting his opinions, preferences, and personality to match whatever he thinks will earn approval from the people around him. He never disagrees, never challenges, never takes unpopular positions, and never leads conversations or groups toward his own vision because he fears conflict or rejection. This constant accommodation doesn't make him well-liked. It makes him forgettable, because people can't respect someone who has no authentic core to respect. Machiavelli's famous quote about fear versus love is often misunderstood. He wasn't advocating for cruelty, but recognizing that respect is more valuable and sustainable than affection without respect. The strong man isn't trying to be feared in the sense of being threatening, but he's willing to be disliked if that's the cost of maintaining his integrity and standards. He leads conversations toward topics that interest him, makes plans based on his genuine preferences, and expresses opinions that reflect his actual values rather than what he thinks others want to hear. Women are especially attracted to men who demonstrate leadership qualities, because leadership implies several desirable traits: confidence in your own judgment, ability to make decisions under pressure, willingness to take responsibility for outcomes, and the social intelligence to guide groups toward positive results. The man who always defers to others' preferences, never takes initiative in planning or decision-making, and constantly seeks approval for his choices, fails to demonstrate any of these leadership qualities. This doesn't mean becoming domineering or dismissive of others' input. Authentic leadership involves listening to different perspectives and incorporating good ideas regardless of their source. But it does mean having your own vision, your own standards, and your own direction that isn't completely dependent on external validation. People follow those who know where they're going, and they respect those who maintain their course even when it's unpopular. To develop leadership qualities, start by taking initiative in small ways. Suggest the restaurant, plan the activity, introduce topics you find genuinely interesting, and express your actual opinions rather than just agreeing with everyone. Practice making decisions confidently and taking responsibility for the results, whether they're positive or negative. The goal isn't to control others, but to demonstrate that you can guide yourself and others toward positive outcomes. Rule number 7. The art of strategic detachment. Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. The weak man becomes emotionally attached to outcomes with such intensity that he can't function effectively when things don't go his way. He obsesses over whether a woman will text him back, loses sleep over job interviews, and becomes devastated when social plans fall through because he's invested his entire emotional well-being in external circumstances beyond his control. This attachment makes him appear needy, desperate, and emotionally unstable to others, particularly to women who need to feel that their partner can handle life's inevitable disappointments with grace and resilience. Machiavelli understood that the most effective leaders maintain emotional distance from outcomes while still working diligently toward their goals. The strong man cares about results but doesn't derive his self-worth from them. He wants the job, the relationship, the social opportunity, but he knows that his value as a person doesn't depend on obtaining any specific outcome. This detachment allows him to pursue what he wants with genuine effort while maintaining the emotional stability that makes him attractive and reliable to others. Strategic detachment doesn't mean not caring about anything. It means not allowing your emotional stability to depend on things you can't fully control. You can work hard for the promotion while accepting that the decision ultimately isn't yours. You can express interest in someone while maintaining your emotional equilibrium regardless of their response. You can invest in friendships while understanding that not every person will reciprocate at the level you'd prefer. This principle becomes especially crucial in dating, where neediness is perhaps the most unattractive quality a man can display. A man who sends multiple texts when he doesn't get an immediate response, who changes his entire schedule to accommodate any opportunity to see a woman, and who becomes visibly dejected when dates don't lead to relationships is communicating that his emotional stability depends on external validation. This dependency makes him appear weak and unreliable as a potential partner. To develop strategic detachment, practice investing effort in your goals while maintaining emotional independence from specific outcomes. Focus on what you can control, your effort, preparation, and attitude, while accepting that results often depend on factors beyond your influence. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent, but rather becoming resilient enough to handle disappointment without it derailing your confidence or self-worth. These 7 Machiavellian principles reveal an uncomfortable truth about human nature. We're drawn to strength and repelled by weakness not because we're cruel, but because strength signals reliability, protection, and emotional stability, qualities that have ensured survival and success throughout human history. The weak man who constantly seeks approval, avoids decisions, lacks boundaries, and depends on others for his emotional stability fails to demonstrate any of these crucial qualities, making himself fundamentally unattractive to women and ineffective in most areas of life. But here's the liberating truth that Machiavelli understood. Strength is a choice, not a birthright. Every man can develop decisiveness through practice, emotional control through discipline, and leadership through taking initiative in small ways that build confidence over time. The transformation from weakness to strength isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming the most powerful version of who you already are, stripped of the self-doubt and people-pleasing that keep you small. Remember, the goal isn't to manipulate or control others, but to develop the authentic strength that naturally commands respect and attracts the people worth having in your life. When you stop seeking approval and start living by your own standards, when you stop avoiding decisions and start trusting your judgment, when you stop accommodating everyone and start maintaining healthy boundaries, you don't just become more attractive to women, you become more effective, more confident, and more satisfied with the life you're actively creating rather than passively accepting. The Prince was written for rulers, but these lessons apply to any man ready to rule his own life with the strength, wisdom, and strategic thinking that transforms boys into men and followers into leaders.